Welcome back to another episode of the Weekly Pass, and I'm excited about our next guest, a friend of mine that goes way back to when we won the Super Bowl together. And here is my boy, Derrick Deese, who is protecting our quarterback, Steve Young. Won the Super Bowl the last time the 49ers went to the Super Bowl. So, Derrick, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So, Derrick, I want to get right into it. Okay, let's talk about this Lions-Niners NFC Championship game. Break it down, and what did you see? What did you like? And what do the Niners need to do different going into the Super Bowl?
Well, I think they started off slow, obviously on defense. I think Detroit came out and threw some things at them that they weren't expecting. But I think overall, I think what hurt the Lions more so is their head coach got a little bit cocky. I understand not liking the kicker and going for it on fourth down and giving your team, that kind of motivation and stuff like that. But when you're playing a game like that, every point counts and every point matters.
Mm-hmm.
And so to get that close and get down there and not get anything for it twice in a row, I mean, that's just you can't fathom that happening. And I don't see any other team doing that. I can tell you this though, if the Niners come out and play like that against KC, number 15 ain't letting you back in the game.
Yeah, that's
it's just not going to happen.
Exactly. Now, Derrick, you talk about Coach Campbell, and I want to talk about the clock management and his play calling. I mean, it was funny. I saw something on Twitter, and someone said he's like the guy at the blackjack table who, on 18, he's like, "Hit me,"
Yeah, and everybody else gets up and walks away.
Yeah,
without a doubt.
I mean, Derrick, what is it? I mean, Mooch would have never done that. Like, what Steve would have never done that. What is it? Like, what do you think he's thinking? I know he likes this kind of mentality and going fourth and long, fourth and short, 2-point conversions, but it didn't work. His luck ran out.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, he played like that somewhat throughout the season, and it worked sometimes, and it didn't work other times. I think that if you're in like I said earlier, if you're in that situation and you're in that game like that and you're up by 14 at that point, why not take the extra 3? Because now you put them, instead of having two possessions to score, now they need 3 possessions. Yeah. And then if you take that other field goal, instead of having 2 possessions where they need touchdowns and a field goal, right? Now they need 3 touchdowns. It's a lot harder to get 3 touchdowns than it is to get 2 touchdowns and a field goal and so forth. And it's harder to score when you have to think about scoring 3 times. Now, when that game hit halftime, I wasn't really worried about it because I still said, like, I've been a part of games where down 24 points, you come back and win that game in the second half. Whatever they put up, you can put up. So adjustments were made. Things happen. And I think a lot of momentum changed, obviously, when that field goal didn't happen, or that 4th and 2 or 4th and 3 didn't happen. And that just brings the crowd back into it. It brings everybody back into it. It brings the team back into it. The offense starts going crazy because the defense has done something, spectacular like that. And now all of a sudden, now you got to deal with all that. And they didn't have to deal with that in the beginning because they had basically kind of taken everybody out of it. They shocked everybody. It was emotions, obviously, for both teams, right? You got the emotions of the Lions thinking, hey, we got this thing. And then you got the emotions of the Niners saying, and what's going on? And then all of a sudden that reverts and it's the other way around. I can't believe this happened for the Lions. And then Niners are like, yeah, I knew we had it. So right. It's great to see them back. It's one thing I would have liked to have played the Ravens again, to see them play the Ravens again, because I think that's the team that kind of came out and kind of hit us right in the mouth right away. But I think we would have had a better grasp of what they can do. All right. And then with KC, you just don't know. You just don't know what team you're going to get. The team that they had during the season, that wasn't the team that showed up in Baltimore. Mm-hmm. And, everybody's counting them out, and everybody's, they got their backs against the wall. They don't have, 2 linemen that are missing, and they just don't care. They got one of the most penalized linemen in the NFL. And it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. They figure some way, somehow, how to get the job done. And that's football, right? Sometimes they say it's better to be lucky than it is to be good. And reality is you need both. You need both. You need luck and you need to be good in order to win a championship. And so Kansas City has that right now, and so the Niners they're destined for it. They've been marked to win it all. I think this is a team that, once again, you're looking at a team that should win it all. And it's a rematch of a Super Bowl that they've already played before.
Right.
So it's going to be interesting. They should know each other pretty well. The coaches know each other pretty well. The coordinators know each other. It's going to be a game that it's going to be exciting. I think. I don't think it's going to be a blowout on either side. I think what we're going to watch is a game where it's going to come down to which QB has the ball last and who can make that last drive.
Yeah, Hollie.
How do you grade Brock Purdy's performance in this game? I mean, they started off slow out at the gate, but then after halftime, they hit the gas. How do you grade that?
Well, in all fairness, when you look at Brock Purdy, they call him Mr. Irrelevant, and I don't think that's the name that's fitting of him. I think he's definitely relevant. I think he's proved that he's relevant. I don't think he gets the credit that he should get. I know people keep talking about, he struggled here, he struggled there. The thing about being a quarterback and what you've seen over the years is that you've seen quarterbacks that come out and they have a great first year and then they struggle really bad in their second year. He didn't have that. He had ups and downs and he had roller coasters. And sometimes some of those interceptions and things like that, they weren't his fault. Yeah. And you got to be a player and you got to know the game in order to understand what I'm saying. And when balls hit receivers in the hands and they tip it up in the air and it's a tip drill and defense grabs it, that's not a quarterback's fault. Yeah, there's times where he threw a pass and it looks like, well, where was he throwing it? Well, was the receiver where he was supposed to be? We don't know that, and unless like football overall, people are just seeing the end result, and they don't know what the play was or what was called or what should have been done or what should have been run, and what he was expecting, and that sometimes is just having, your receiver and your quarterback off sync a little bit, or the receiver not, getting out where he thought he should have got out, or misreading what the defense was giving him, and so I think the last couple of games prior to the Detroit game, I think you were looking at Brock and people were like, he's starting to taper down. He's tapering down. Well, he came out this game and he was gun ho. He was fired up about really wanting to play this game and show what he could do. And I think you saw what he could do.
Mm-hmm. Now, Derrick, we talked to Jeff Garcia last week, and we were asking about the Brock Purdy hate. If you watch and you listen to the media, they're always trying to attack him. Some people kind of backtracked and said, okay, I'll give him another shot. But now he has, like Shannon Sharp said, he needs to win it all for him to be considered an elite quarterback. What are your thoughts on Brock Purdy, and why is he getting all this hate?
I think a lot of it boils down to how they perceive a guy. A lot of times, as a player, you come into this league, and whether you're the last pick of the draft or you're a free agent, it's hard for some guys that have become elite to look at a guy and automatically say, "Hey, this guy's arrived, and he's the face of the franchise, or a face of the NFL, or he's ready to be the next great thing because he's not number one or number two picked in the draft." But we've also seen number one and number two picked in the draft be the worst player ever picked. Yep. And so I think that's where a lot of that comes from. I don't understand it. I know the quarterback gets a lot of praise when things go well, and I know the quarterback takes a lot of heat when things don't go well. I haven't been able to figure out why he's taking a lot of heat, because they haven't been terrible. They've been pretty damn good. And overall, I think you look at it, like I said, his name and how they kind of they give him that mantra of, Mr. Irrelevant. I think that kind of states kind of what people believe about him. And that maybe they need to change that last draft pick's name, because that last draft pick kind of sticks with he's Mr. Irrelevant. No, he's become really relevant. And I think if you ask those guys in the locker room, they get behind him, they support him. You got guys on defense that are coming in after and talking interviews and talking about him, like Fred's talking about him, saying, "Hey, look, this is Brock, and we're riding with Brock." Yeah. And that's what you need, and that's all that matters. And ultimately, at the end of the day, in that locker room, we always believe that, hey, it's just us, and it's just you in the locker room, and it's you against the world, and that's what it is. So when it comes to reading your press clippings and all that stuff, don't do it. And I don't think they do it. And I think, they don't care. I like the guy. I think he's really humble. I think he cares about his team. I think he cares about playing. I think he puts in the work, and it shows. And I don't think he gets rattled. And that's a big thing for quarterbacks is he just doesn't get rattled. He moves on to the next play, and you got to have a guy like that.
Yeah. Yeah, it pisses me off though, Derrick, because it's like he's always getting so much heat, and he's such a good guy. Like you see him walking into the locker room, he's very humble. It's like, what's not to like about him? I don't understand it. It drives me crazy.
Like I said, I think you look at, from that last game, right? I wouldn't look at anything other than what impressed me was he got out and ran.
And he was
you
running.
hadn't
I
seen
know. I
that
was
from
shocked
him.
how much he was running.
They're talking about what he has to do in order to prove himself. I'm like, talk about the things that he's doing that's improving his game. Talk about what he's doing that's showing you a different aspect of his game. Talk about, this guy is, no matter what people were saying about him, he's coming out and he's still performing. I think sometimes you look at some of the former players that speak and they kind of forget where they were and where they came from. And when they were playing, when people were giving them heat and how they didn't like it. And it becomes one of those things like, well, I'm going to speak the truth. Like, I don't think you're speaking the truth. I think you're out there putting down heat and you're putting down hate on another player that doesn't really deserve that. And he doesn't need it. You're talking about a guy who's in the Super Bowl.
Right.
That's what your goal is at the end of the day, your goal is, hey, look, I want to get to the ship. And he's made it there, and he's gotten his team there, and it's the second year, and the guy played with some toughness, and he's shown that, over the time that he's played. And to me, I don't see where that hate comes from. I don't see what people were talking about, and I don't understand it. And I know if I were playing in the league, that's a guy I would like to play for. I'd love to block for him and protect him and things like that. And I think you look at that team, and that team is the same way. And the fact that, like I said earlier, when you have the defense speaking about you right after the game on the field, man, he's won that locker room over, and that's what you need as a quarterback.
Yeah, I mean,
do you think
taking him back-to-back NFC Championship games and now to the Super Bowl? So I don't get it. But Hollie, go ahead.
I was going to ask, do you think that this 49ers team is the best that we've seen in the Kyle Shanahan under his reign so far?
I think it could be. I mean, it definitely could be. I mean, you got to take that running back and that number 23. You got to take him and put him in consideration.
I know, right?
He changes the whole dynamic of any offense that Shanahan has had, just alone by himself. And that defense it's phenomenal. They bring in Chase Young, put him on the other side of Bosa. Now you got to pick your weapon. Who's going to make the play? Who's not? And if you forget about one, that other one's there. And so I think the secondary is definitely improved because I know over the last couple of years, I mean, the guys have talked about, hey, secondary, but I think those guys are definitely, they've handled their business. They've done what they're supposed to do. They put pressure on quarterbacks. You can't really ask for anything else. I think so. Obviously, I think this team to come out. I mean, they've had other teams obviously that said, "Hey, look, they should get to the Super Bowl," and they've gotten there. They've done that, but they haven't won it. And I think this team gives them the best chance. I said it in the beginning of the year that I believe that if they were able to stay healthy, if McCaffrey was able to stay healthy and be productive like he wants to be, which is still wants to carry a load and be able to not get hurt or banged up, I think that they have a great shot at winning it all. And that's exactly what's happened. And so now you just got to finish it. You got one more game to accomplish your goal.
In the mood for something nostalgic? Try our deliciously spiked take on this classic staple. Our new spiked cherry cola blends the flavors of premium Maker's Mark bourbon, made with red winter wheat instead of the usual rye. Have you ordered one yet?
Now, Derrick, don't judge me. I gotta preface this question. I'm a Dallas Cowboys fan,
I'm sorry. You
I'm
okay?
a disgruntled Dallas Cowboys fan,
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah, yeah,
I have extreme playoff envy.
yeah,
With,
yes, yeah,
with
yes. You
you
should. You should.
49ers types.
Right.
So going back to this game last week, um, Dan Campbell, there's a huge disparity there in experience between he and Kyle Shanahan. Do you think that some of the coaching decisions that he made is just a lack of experience with having a playoff game like that under his belt? I wouldn't know because
No,
Cowboys don't make it that
no,
far, so I just need to hear it from
no, no. I don't think there was a disparity in the amount of years that he's been there and been successful. I've talked to Campbell. I know Campbell. He coached my son. I he has that locker room. All right, and he's changed the whole dynamic way that football is played in Detroit, the way the players look at it, and how the fans perceive Detroit, the Lions themselves. He's got that locker room believing in him and his coaches and his coaching staff. To have that many former players on a team, I think is something that you see a lot in the NBA. Right, you see a lot of former players coaching on the sidelines in the NBA. You don't see a lot of former players on the same team coaching in the NFL. And I think that he's showing you that that's a way that you can really accomplish a lot of things. Players being able to be coached by former players that did it and understand it. I think you got in a situation. I don't think the situation was too big for them. I don't think that they were overwhelmed by what they were going into. I think that there's certain things that you live by, and I think he decided at some point that he was going to go for it. Look, if he makes that one of those first downs, all right, he makes the 4th and 2, or he makes the 4th and 3, and they score a touchdown. We're not talking about that.
Yeah.
True.
We're not talking about. We're not talking about. Well, were they out coached? We're not talking about. Did he make bad decisions? We're talking about, man, they came out and they shocked the Niners, a team that was supposed to win it all, and the fact that they put up that fight, right? That in itself should tell you where they are. They didn't give up. They gave everything they had, and it just didn't work out. It's certain things that happen. And yeah, hindsight's 50-50, right? You go back and look at it. I'm sure right now he's saying, man, I should have kicked the ball. I should have kicked it.
Yeah.
Right. But believe me, like if they make one and they score, it's a whole different ball game.
Right.
And that's football, right? That's why you play the game, and that's why things happen. Would he do it again? I don't know. I mean, it depends on, him and himself. Like, you go into a game and you want to leave with no regret, and you want to leave believing you made the right calls and did the best thing for the team. He believes everything is for the team. He's changed that whole dynamic there, where it's toughness and it's family, and it's we're gonna play. We're not gonna, you're gonna come into our house. It's gonna be something you have to feel, and you're gonna feel pain. And he has that, and he's that guy that can do that, and he's done a great job there. So I don't think he was out coached. I don't think you can take that one game and take away everything that he's done and what he's built there from just those 2 calls. That's kind of like looking at Dan Quinn and saying, hey, look, he changed the defense in Dallas, right? And then all of a sudden, the game against Green Bay, which everyone knew they were going to lose, they end up, the defense doesn't show up. It just didn't play well, right? I'm a firm believer that, coaches call plays, but they can't play for the player.
Yeah, that's true.
And the players have to play. The players have to do what they have to do. I remember Mike Shanahan said one time, like, hey, look, if I call a play and all 11 players do what they're supposed to do and it doesn't work, then you can blame me. But if one player messes up on one aspect of that play and it doesn't work, don't look at me and say anything. You got to do your job. And so it's things like that where you look at it and say, man, what happened on that play with Campbell when he called 4th and 2? Did a player miss a block? Was a player not low enough? Did he not have leverage? All those kind of things. And so I don't look back and say like, coaches made the bad call, because, as a lineman, that's what you want. You want your coach to believe in you and say, hey, look, it's 4th and 1, 4th and 2. We're going for it. And I've been in that situation a lot of times. I was in it, and sometimes we called it and sometimes we didn't. And the times that we called it, I was happy, right? Because you're putting belief in me, you're putting trust in me. Times we didn't call it, I was a little upset sometimes, because it's like, hey man, we can get this, and you don't believe in this, but is that what's best for the team at the time? And the coach has to be the one to decide that.
Mm-hmm. Derrick, speaking of when you were playing, do you have any fond memories or some crazy story from when Super Bowl 95, the 94 team, we were in Miami, beat the Chargers, but do you have any fun stories or anything you can share with Hollie and I? I have one for you. I have one for you after. So.
From the Super Bowl itself?
Well, leading up to it that week there, whatever. I mean, you're not playing anymore. It's been a long time, Derrick. You can let your hair down and just tell us.
I'm so glad I'm bald. I don't have to let my hair down. No, I
come on, Derrick. We're in Miami. Come on, stop.
I know, but I'm gonna keep it clean.
Okay,
I'm not gonna keep in I'm not letting anybody's secrets
all
out.
right.
So
man.
I will just say this. That was my first Super Bowl. I had lost to the Cowboys twice, unfortunately, right? And then we beat the Cowboys, and we were on our way to Super Bowl. We're supposed to win. Eddie's already said, hey, we're bringing back the trophy. There's a lot of pressure on you, right? And the two young guys were myself and Floyd on offense. Mm-hmm. And so I remember everyone's saying, hey, treat this like a normal game, a normal week, right? And so there was times where guys went out because that's what they did during the week, right? And there was times where guys didn't come back on time and missed some curfews and things like that. And there was, a time at that point where the players called their own meeting and had to really call everybody in and say, hey, look, we're here for a reason. And let's not forget what that reason is. And it got pretty vocal. It got really vocal because you got to remember the dynamic of stars that we had. We had
Steve and Jerry.
You got Dent, you got Jerry, and you got Steve. Steve wasn't a guy that went out. He wasn't a guy that went out like that. But you had Dion, who was back in his element, and so you got Ricky Jack and things like that, and I just remember Ricky Jack saying, hey, look, everyone's not Dion, and everyone's not going to be able to stay out past curfew and things like that. But at the end of the day, I'll tell you this, when the game was over, I did treat it like a regular week. And the one thing that I kind of look back and kind of regret is that I didn't take in more of it. Because it's my third year playing, right? And I know it's 10 years from when Richard Dent had gone back. And I'm thinking like, it's my third year. Like I'll go back again in a couple years at the latest, right? Because we have a team that's just that good and just that dynamic. And so, obviously 11 years later, not going back and losing NFC championship games and being so close, but I wish I would have taken in more of it as a player, and enjoyed it a little bit more. That's more so than just looking at it as a normal week and not worrying about going out and hanging out and seeing things and experiencing what the Super Bowl really is. Obviously, I've been to some after I retired and things like that, and it's pretty damn fun. It's a lot of parties that go on. It's a lot of things that happen. And it might have been a little bit more fun as you're playing and doing it.
Yeah.
And so but you don't want to get too carried away, obviously, because you're still there for it's a business trip,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And ultimately, at the end of the day, you don't want any of that stuff to take away from you being able to have that hardware, because you don't know if you're ever going to get back to get that hardware.
Yeah.
And the fact that I think the Niners and Shanahan and these guys they've had a couple opportunities. You got to take advantage of one of these because you just don't know. I mean, I think if you look at it, at some point the salary cap starts to play a factor. Teams start coming in and grabbing guys.
Mhm.
And so when you think like, well, we'll be okay for the future. Nah, you got to take advantage
Never
of your
know.
opportunity now. And you just never know what's going to happen.
Mhm. Absolutely. Derek, do you remember what us cheerleaders, we flew with y'all on the plane? I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah.
Okay, well, on the
Yes.
flight back, me and one of the other girls, remember we almost missed the flight. I don't know if you remember this. Y'all had to hold the plane for me and another
Hold the
cheerleader.
plane.
Yeah, we
Correct.
got in big trouble
Correct.
because we were out partying, right? And we forgot that our flight left at a certain time, so we had to I think I left some of my clothes actually in the hotel because I didn't have time. And then we ended up taking a cab because we missed the bus, a cab to the, do you remember this at all, to the plane? And then
I remember holding the plane for you. That's how everyone knows you, by the way. Don't think no one doesn't know you for that. Everybody knows you for this, but keep going.
yeah, and Derek, you remember that was the time where after we flew back, we were going right into the parade. So they were kind of
Correct.
waiting. We were on like a very strict schedule. And I was,
Yes,
Derek,
yeah.
you have to remember, I was 18 years old. So talking about taking it in, I took it in. I'm like, I'm 18. This is fun.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about. I didn't get to take it in.
I took it in for you. And
She did enough for you.
She did enough for everybody.
Yeah. So I
She did
didn't know if
enough.
you remember that so long ago, but I just remember we were in big trouble. Eddie D
There's some
would
things
come
you
up to me and
don't
talk to me.
forget. There's some things you don't forget.
Yeah.
And usually when they hold a plane for someone or the plane leaves without someone,
Yeah.
everyone
I can't believe for as long as I've known you, Bonnie-Jill, I've never heard a
Yeah, and
story.
it felt
And
like I'm Jerry
you-
Rice, I'm just a cheerleader,
Yeah.
18 years old, and they're holding the plane. Oh, I got in so much trouble.
Well, the one
I-
thing is Eddie D would never leave any of us.
I know.
And he always included the cheerleaders with us and everything we did. We were really one big huge
We really
like
were.
family.
We really were.
And it was, I mean, it's hard to see because I don't think a lot of teams understand how close everybody was and how Eddie kept everyone together, and he didn't want anybody excluded from anything, including when it came down to rings and pennants and all that stuff for the rings that for the Super Bowl and all that stuff. So he tried to make sure everyone got taken care of.
Yeah, we got a
And
ring,
that's
Derek. Do you remember? I mean, my ring
yeah,
is much
I know.
smaller than
I
yours,
know.
but we got those little rings.
You guys got the rings, the same rings that the wives got and
Yes.
all that other stuff. So I mean, it's I think a lot of people don't understand that, and some teams don't do that, and they
No.
don't take care of the cheerleaders like
No.
that. And Eddie that's just what he was. He was that type of an
such a
owner.
class act. And I remember finding out
Yep.
that he was the first owner, Derek, to give cheerleaders rings. And then Broncos and Patriots, they all started to kind of follow suit.
Yep.
But he was
Everybody
the
had
first.
to follow in.
Yeah, and I think what it was
Everybody had to follow in.
about the family, even when all of us get together, like we saw each other a couple years ago, Holly, it's crazy. We all we're like, it's like time never passed. Like it's really neat.
I'm floored though that you flew on the same plane, Derek. I cheered for the Cowboys, and to ever have the Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders on the same plane with the players, I can't even.
Well, we were in the back,
and you were
back of the plane.
It doesn't matter. The fact that you were on the same plane just still floors me.
Yeah, but you do understand that's why you guys don't win. You guys aren't tight enough.
Well, listen,
you do understand
I was back. I'm dating myself, so I was back in '96.
Yeah.
So they were coming off of back to back. So at that time, they were.
But look, it's okay. I mean,
I need
it's karma.
therapy.
It's karma. It's borrowed time. It's borrowed
Okay.
time.
So I'm going to change the subject on you. I'm going to throw this out of left field because I can't go there right now. I'm not ready to talk about it. I need to talk about your Trojans and some Big Ten conference. Come on, what do you think about this whole Big Ten situation? I cannot believe the schedule. And I looked like to see the teams. Oh my God! Tell me about your thoughts on this.
Okay, I get it's for money. I understand that. I understand that 100%. I think that at some point they have to do a realignment, and get rid of a lot of this so that it becomes fair for the players and the student athletes that are in the game, because you're talking about, for football it's not that bad, right? Because we can travel and we can come right back. But for basketball,
Mhm.
these guys are going to be on the road for a long time,
Mhm.
and you're going to be flying. They're not going to want to fly back and then fly back and
No.
then fly
Right.
back, and then they're going to be in hotels. They're going to be missing school. It's going to be hard to have, yeah, they can do some online stuff, but that's still not being, at your campus, at your school, for a long period of time. And I get that's what they do in the NBA and all that stuff. So if you're getting prepared for that, then you might as well, but not now, like not as a freshman, not as a sophomore, some of these guys, they want to get that education and they need to be able to get it. Um, the other thing is like when it comes down to football wise for the Trojans, I'm not sure at this point that they're built for the Big Ten, offensively. And I think you have to look at the line being something that was viewed as being a little bit weak last year and the year before. And when you look at, I think they were ranked like 18th in recruiting class, and the top picks from that class were receivers, not linemen. So that tells me you didn't really get better at that.
Mhm.
Um, you're going to have a little bit of problems. You're going to have a little bit of an issue. And everyone that's looking at it from the standpoint of what kind of football is played there, it's completely different than what's played in the Pac-12. Yeah, can SC compete? They'll compete. They will. Will they be great? I'm not sure. I don't know that they've done enough recruiting wise to do that. Now, that can they pull some people from the portal? Yeah, you hope.
Mhm.
But is it enough to get them by? Maybe it's a band-aid, right? And you can't really do that. You have to be able to have something ready year after year after year, and you can't keep depending on the portal. And that's become I think a downfall for football overall. I think kids should be allowed to move from school to school if they choose, but I also believe you have to have certain scholarships. Like I think at some point they need to go and say, hey, look, you can pull X, Y, and Z from the portal, but you have to take X, Y, and Z from high school
Yeah.
because you still want development, right? And some schools aren't even taking any development. They're just taking almost like free agency in the
Yeah,
NFL.
exactly.
And they're saying, hey, look, we're going to take this and do X, Y, and Z with it. And this is it. And we
Mhm.
don't care about the high school kids. And so there's no development. Well, then at some point the portal is going to run out, right?
Mhm.
Because there's not going to be enough guys transferring. And then you're going to have high school kids. And are they going to be the ones ready to go, or the ones that you missed? Or are they going to be JC kids, which is fine because I was a JC guy, and I think that helps develop some kids. But you got to be able to; those kids got to be able to get out. When you're talking about a state that has like Georgia, 600 kids that usually come out of there, and they're bringing out 250. It's not enough kids.
Right.
California's a lot less, and California, Texas, and Florida have always been tops when it comes to recruiting for out of state. And still there are some Division ones that will take in-state high school kids because they know they're not going to get a lot of portal kids, right? And so San Jose State and maybe Fresno State and places like that, they're still going to pull their high school kids because that's what they need. San Diego State's going to pull their high school kids. They'll take a couple transfers, right? Portal kids, but for the most part, they're going to take high school kids, develop them, and hope that some big Power Five doesn't come and take those kids from them.
Right.
And that's the reality of it. But I think when you start looking at things like that, I looked at character for kids that do that. I think if I'm running a program and I give you a chance and you become successful in my program, and somebody else wants to come and take you, what kind of character do you
Yeah.
have if you just bail on me? They didn't
Right.
give you a chance
Yeah.
coming out of high
For
school. I'm the
integrity.
one that gave you that
Yeah.
chance. You know, and I think some kids have that and some don't, but that shows character too. You know what I mean? So that same kid that does that is going to be the same kid that goes into the league and you drafted him you made him what he is, and then all of a sudden he just says, "Hey, I'm out. I don't want to be here because you're not winning." Well, yeah, but I'm not winning, but I made you who you
Yeah.
are because I gave you the opportunity that nobody else was going to give you. You know,
That's a great point.
that's what I look at. That's how I look at it. And I think, people have to get back to understanding that. Kids have to get back to understanding that it's not always about the money. Sometimes it's about, the morals and the values that you have in your life. What are you trying to show your kids when you get older? Are you a person of your word? That kind of thing. And I think to some extent the portal was good, but for the most part, I think it's hurt football.
I think so too.
I
Overall.
think so.
And I think I'm all for athletes getting paid, right? I think college athletes deserve to get paid based off of the amount of money that they generate for schools.
Yeah.
I just think that I don't view it as one athlete is worth more than another athlete on the same team. I think, because I'm watching guys get paid $9 million in an NIL deal, and I'm watching the offensive lineman get, $10,000, $100,000. And he's putting in the same work, and he's doing the same exact thing, and he's building the school the same exact way. I just think they need to figure out a way to make that fair for everyone. Whether that's, the school gets the NIL and they have to divide that up for the athletes themselves or whatever, based on whether you're a starter or not a starter, whether you start this amount of many games versus starting that amount of many games. But in essence, every athlete that's in that school, that's on scholarship or walked on, that's made it and being part of that team, they're all building that school, and they're all building that campus, and they're all making it better, and they're all making it well known, and so they all deserve to get paid, and not just one guy.
Yeah, I agree. And it's funny, Derek, you say that because me and Holly were talking about this. Arch Manning's making he made like 3.2 in the NIL, and then you look at Brock Purdy. I mean, at 950,000, it's like kind of, if you think about it, Derek, it's pretty crazy, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, when you think about that, back when I played, that wasn't the biggest issue. The biggest issue, because the money that you're talking now is sick. It's sick money. It's crazy.
Yeah.
But when I played, the biggest thing they would talk about is a guy playing, 6 or 7 years, 8 years in the league, and a guy that's getting ready to get drafted is gonna dwarf this guy in money wise, because he's gonna be the second pick of the draft or the first pick of the draft, and he's gonna make 3 times the salary that this guy is making, and he hasn't done not one thing. He hasn't played not one down.
Right. Yeah.
And so that was the big talk back then. Now they've figured out a way, obviously, to cap a little bit of that, right? And they bring that down, and it becomes a little bit more fair. But there's still some disparity, but not as much. And that's, you got to figure that out in college, right? Because I know if you're that guy who's making $9 million in college on your NIL deal, guess what? It's hard for a coach to tell you anything.
Yeah.
It really is. And what if that coach doesn't like what you're doing? Guess what? You got 9 million reasons why he's going to say something. And if he says something and he doesn't like it, he'll take that money and go somewhere else. And that's what this has become. It's not stick it out. It's not, hey, things got a little bit tough, let me stay here and fight. It's, oh, I'm just going to jump ship. And that's, I don't know. I think people talk about what comes out of the portal, but they don't talk about how many people are really in the portal. And that's the thing that people miss. And when you start saying like, oh yeah, well, guess what? They pulled, 300 kids from the portal. Yeah, but there's like 3,000 kids in the portal. So what happens to the other 2,700? They're stuck there. There's nothing for them to do. Some can go back to their schools because they allow it.
And some can't.
Some don't, because some can't, because once you jumped into the portal, you gave up that scholarship. And ultimately, that's what we've always taught kids, that a football can get you an education, and we want you to get that education, whether it's Division I, Division II, or Division III. It doesn't matter. It's getting that education for free and paid for that allows you to be successful the rest of your life. And at this point, man, when a kid's giving up a scholarship because he's just not happy where he's at, because he wants to go to a Power 5 because he doesn't like being in a Division 2, or he doesn't like the Power 5 that he's at because he's not playing as much as he thinks he should. What happened to just getting better so that you can play?
Mm-hmm.
What happened to sticking it out and just grinding and hustling and doing the things you have to do so that you can become the starter or become a guy that's, involved in the offense or the defense or special teams or whatever it is that you want to do? What happened to that? And that seems like that's just dissipated and gone away.
That's everywhere, Derrick. The work ethic of the younger generation.
It's the work ethic of the generation.
Yeah.
They've cut a lot of things for football, time wise and play wise
Mm-hmm.
and things like that. And it's harder for the offensive line to gel because of the amount of time that they don't get to work together. Sometimes cutting the preseason games and things like that, cutting practices 2-a-days.
2 days are gone. Yeah.
The amount of padded practices you get, those kind of things you can't. You look back on and I say, like, man, we used to be out there for 2.5 hours and sometimes 3, and then you still got an extra 45 to an hour in of extra work, with a few other guys,
Mm-hmm.
just because you wanted to get better. Well, now that's cut down to an hour and 45 minutes, and you're telling me guys are staying another hour. Well, that's just getting to the regular practice that you used to have. So what do you want to really do to get better? And that's the hard part about it, because they can be successful at it and do less. And so they choose to stay with that. Very few guys are the guys that really go out and do everything that's required old school ways, and I get it. It's a new generation. I get it's a new way of thinking, a new way of playing. I understand all that. But at the end of the day, it's the game. And I think you look at the injury types that are happening and occurring, and the injuries are completely different. Right. So we got guys that are tearing ACLs on just open field cuts. Well, why is that? Is that because his ligaments are weaker now than they were 20 years ago? No, guys had the same ligaments. The thing is that guys don't hit as much. Guys don't work as long, and they don't practice as hard. And when you don't practice as hard or you're in pads, guess what? When you're not in pads, you're not going as hard.
Yeah.
And so when you get out on that football field, now all of a sudden you're in pads and you want to go 100 miles an hour, things are going to happen. So you're looking at different injuries, and they thought they were helping themselves by stopping concussions and so forth. They may have done that, but I think over a period of time, you're going to start to watch that there's going to be different injuries that have occurred because the body is not prepared to do what they're asking it to do, and take those type of hits and take people falling on you and so forth. And linemen are getting hurt with serious ankle injuries because a guy falls on them because they don't know how to fall with that, because they haven't had that happen 25 times in camp. Right. And so you get used to those things and you know how to go with it and fall with it and so forth. And now all of a sudden that doesn't happen. And so I just think those are the kind of things you look at and say the game's changed a little bit. I don't think it's safer. I think it's the same game. I think you still can get the same amount of concussions, because now guys aren't getting concussions by hitting each other. They're getting concussions when their head hits the ground, which is not really what we got concussions from. We got concussions from being hit head to head. When we hit the ground, it wasn't really a problem, right? And so now it's a problem, and that's just the game. It's the dynamic. Guys signed up to play the sport. It's a rough sport. Let them play.
Derrick, this is all good stuff. This was really good. I really loved it. You were more talkative than I thought, Derrick. I really liked it.
I'm glad you did.
Well, thank you so much. I don't know if you'll be at Super Bowl. I'll be out there in Vegas. I don't know if you're going, but
no, I'm not going.
I thought you were going to go because the Niners are in it. No, all right.
I was planning on going.
All your boys are going.
I'm actually going to go. I know they're all going. They're trying to get me to go. BY and JB, all those guys are calling me already. I'm actually going to go up and speak at a church in San Jose on the day of the game. So I was thinking about going out there and leaving Saturday night, but I mean, that might still
Yeah,
happen, but
that
I'm
means
not
it's
sure.
going to.
I'm
You've
pretty-
already thought it through a little bit, so that means you're already like thinking of it. Yes, you could get
I'm thinking of
it's an
it.
hour
I've been
flight,
thinking about it,
Derek.
but
It's an hour flight.
I'm not even worried about that.
Yeah.
I'm not worried about all that.
Yeah, you'll be fine. So I'll see you there. All right.
Just
I'll
put
be
me in
at
trouble
home.
already.
I'll be at home in Dallas in my nice
Yeah,
own
home's
bed
staying
without
put,
bed bugs.
but I'll be there. I'm
Yeah,
gonna,
like the rest of the Cowboys.
yeah.
Yeah, well, I don't have to deal with the Vegas bed bug situation. So.
Hey, I agree on that too. See that? Come on, man.
Whatever. We're not getting bed bugs. But Derek, I'm throwing a party on Thursday night again. So I'll text you and send you the info if you want to head out.
Yeah, text me.
Okay. All
Okay.
right. Thanks, Derek.
All right.
See you
Take
soon.
care.
Everybody.
Thank you.
Have a
Bye
good
bye.
one.
You guys take
Okay,
care.
bye.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hey fantasy fans! Check out our newest bomb, made with White Claw and Svedka Cherry Limeade Vodka. We serve it ice cold, alongside a can of White Claw Black Cherry Hard Seltzer. We call it the Cherry Limeade Bomb. Let's go!